Let's move on. Episode 8, Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Featuring
I actually want to tell a story about this with Medicare.
Alex Press. Since the economic crash of 2008, polling has consistently showed that young Americans are embracing socialism more than capitalism. Media outlets like Jacobin and associations like DSA have emerged, and they're mobilizing and informing new generations of political thinkers. In this episode of Rumble with Michael Moore, Michael is joined by Alex Press, an editor and writer at Jacobin, a labor organizer, and a DSA member. She and Michael discuss the movement behind the Bernie Sanders camp, healthcare, the Wizard of Oz, suicide, labor, and more.
Because obviously this is sort of Sanders, one of his key issues, but also something that the left has long said is a bare minimum of what we need in this country. We need to start having universal healthcare. We need to remove the profit motive from the healthcare system. We need to make sure people are not homeless or bankrupt because they got cancer, which happens all the time. And I mean, Sanders, there was this moment where in a recent town hall, I think he was having, I forget what state it was, there was a veteran who stood up and said, and it was about healthcare, this conversation that was happening. And he said to Sanders, it was something like $159,000 in medical debt because of some condition or something. And he said, Bernie, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Bernie said, how are you going to pay for that? And he said, I'm not going to. I think I'm going to kill myself. And it was this incredibly, upsetting, terrifying moment. Sanders immediately said, let's talk after. You're not going to kill yourself. We're going to get this all fixed. Now, I think last week there was a follow-up where at another town hall, this guy was speaking and he was alongside Sanders, and he said that Sanders had sort of assisted him in getting his congresspeople to help him with fixing these insurance problems that were keeping him sort of in the crevices of the system, and with all of these charges adding up, he got all this public sympathy, of course, for this startling situation and what he said, and so it helped, and he said he basically didn't have to pay anything. He paid some small amount for sort of having been not correctly insured. But
I gotta think about it. The very idea of insurance on health is absurd. Insurance is a gamble. I take out fire insurance because I hope I'm not going to have a fire in my house. Chances are I'm not going to have a fire in my house, but there may be a fire in my house. So you take out the insurance, and it's a win-win situation. The insurance company pools a lot of people who bet that they won't have a fire, but if they do, we're covered. Boom, boom. Okay. Car insurance, same thing. It works great because we don't want to get into an accident. We can avoid getting into an accident. Therefore, when an accident does happen, hey, they can pay out. It's okay. We're all safe. But health insurance, think about it. What are you gambling? That you're not going to get ill? Duh! It's called aging. We're all going to need the health care. So you can't gamble it like, I may or may not have a fire. I may or may not get into a car accident. I may or may not need health care. No, you will need health care. So there's no, oh my God, a for-profit insurance on health care is obscene because the only way they can fucking make profit is by ripping off the consumer, by not paying out when the inevitable happens. I mean, see, in gambling, the house has to win. So how can the house win with health insurance unless you, the consumer, lose? Oh, it's frustrating. Let's see what Michael Moore and Alex Press have to say.
It was doable, and now he was feeling much better, right? He didn't have this burden over his head. And it was this feel-good story, right? But that guy just got lucky enough that he happened to be at the Sanders town hall, and that he becomes this viral guy, that he gets his situation sort of resolved in a humane way. And there are millions of people like this in this country. And I bring it up because I had a friend a month prior to that town hall where the guy says, I'm going to kill myself because of my medical bills. A 28-year-old bartender in Boston, which was where I lived before New York, who killed himself because of medical bills. He'd had an emergency surgery and was, again, 28, working class guy, was starting to owe upwards near to $100,000 in medical bills. And he knew it was just going to keep going for the rest of his life. And he was a huge Sanders supporter. He was a socialist. And he killed himself. And so I think when people talk about suffering, a lot of times people think we're being sort of a bit dramatic as far as the stakes. But I just want to reassure people that, like, this is a life or death situation. And if you don't know people in these situations, it's probably because you're in an institution like Manhattan or somewhere where you're walled off from what suffering really looks like in this country.
Leg there, oh my goodness. Pardonnez-moi. So embarrassing. This is not one of those videos, you know. I'm not trying to, sell these sexy parts.
Hello there, everyone. This is Michael Moore. This is Rumble, my weekly podcast that I seem to be doing every day, every other day, but that's what we decided to do our first 2 weeks here during the holidays, just to get into the swing of things, to kick off our big podcast. We'd come to you as much as we could during these days. Today's guest is the wonderful writer and editor, Alex Press. She is the assistant editor of Jacobin magazine, and she has written for a number of publications. And I think is one of the best thinkers, analysts, writers of what's going on politically. I had started off thinking about this podcast today. I was just actually going to talk to you about a number of things on my mind, and then I learned that she was leaving town and was free. So I asked her if she'd stop by just to join in with a conversation with me, because she's a reporter. She also started to ask me questions, which was great. And in fact, she started by asking me about the level of fear. We just heard the fire trucks go down the street here in New York City. And what is it when whatever that is that triggers a sense of the doom and gloom that we're all feeling right now? And so we started off with her asking me about that. And I think we'll just hop right into it, but thanks for tuning in today, and thanks for being part of this and subscribing to this free podcast. So here we go with Alex Press. I learn things every time I read something that you've written or something that one of your fellow writers have written in Jacobin. And you've also written for The Nation and Washington Post, and you're a member of the DSA, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's the Democratic Socialists of America, or it's essentially what Bernie calls himself, a Democratic Socialist. I believe he's yet to actually join.
Yes, that's
is that
right.
true? The DSA.
That's correct.
So Bernie, this is Bernie everywhere. I've known him since late '80s, and I went up and did a rally for him when he first ran for Congress. And he is truly the guy. If you were saying, well, how come he's running as a Democrat and he has never joined the Democratic Party? He hasn't even joined the Democratic Socialists, the thing that he says that he is. Mm-hmm. It's why what you see is what you get with him. I don't. Where do you stand on Bernie? I don't mean to lead off with that question, but I
love Bernie. I'm a big Bernie supporter. I'm going to fight to get Bernie into the White House all the way.
Until I don't know when, maybe this week.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And maybe it was when I saw the Democrats vote in favor of Trump's Space Force.
Yes.
What?
Exactly.
I'm like, so we're going to get rid of Trump, but we're going to have the Space Force, and we're going to have all these other awful ideas
Sure.
that gave us Trump. So I'm just curious where Where are you at right now politically with things?
With the election, so obviously I love Bernie, and more than Bernie himself, I just appreciate having someone who is on the side of the working class, right? He speaks a language that in workplace organizing settings, in places where we're trying to reach a mass of people and it's not maybe Harvard or something, Sanders is looking out for that, and he's communicating those ideas to the average person, I think. So in that sense, it's much more than just loving Bernie, though I love, his crankiness and his consistency, but just feeling that there's a politician whose goal at least largely overlaps with mine, which is much less about what's he going to do in office per se, but how does what he does in general benefit working class people? How does he build our own power so that we can push for even more than he would be able to give us on his own? So in that sense, one of many reasons I like Sanders. How I'm feeling about the election is actually, I would say at the moment, pretty good. I mean, it's still so early, but I think the Sanders campaign is continuing to show itself to be quite strong. It's done things that no one else has done that I find particularly important. I read about labor a lot, and the way Sanders and his campaign have related to striking workers, people who are newly unionizing, people in right-to-work states who are trying to repeal right-to-work, Sanders' labor platform. All of these things make me feel good, because usually the election cycle in the United States is such a drain on movements, right?
Right.
And I think it still is, largely, in a lot of ways. But Sanders is making such a point to try to use this incredibly long period of time to build movements instead of drain them and sort of push them into just...
Yeah, I think that piece of this is so important, the movement, because let's face it, if Bernie wins, if Bernie is the next president of the United States, the things that he and I, you, others want to have happen is not going to just happen.
Right.
There will be massive forces afoot to try and stop him.
Sure.
But if he has built a movement during the year 2020, during this election year, he will take into the Oval Office millions with him.
Right.
Millions will feel like that is their office, literally, not as a cliche or whatever. That is that, because it's the only way he will succeed, with having millions of people behind him and doing the work that's going to be needed to get laws passed.
Exactly, and I think it's that he knows that that's the case. So it's not just that I believe his rhetoric about the organizer-in-chief, or when he says, not me, us. I believe he means those things. But I think Sanders fundamentally, as someone who comes from a socialist tradition and a democratic socialist background, really understands the obstacles.
I am proud to be a democratic socialist.
The ambitious policies, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's doubling
if we don't, as a society, take care of each other, then we live in a sick, dog-eat-dog world. And I, for one, don't want to live in a world where it's every dog for himself.
But sometimes, maybe even ahead of you, and saying, Bernie, come on, let's get going on repealing Taft-Hartley, things like this. And so, I think Sanders is the rare U.S. politician that feels like we can work with this as far as socialists, and he's one of us, 100%.
Right. Yes, one of us.
Yes.
It's rare that happens, and yet I think too, maybe, and I'm not a cynic, but I've lived long enough now to... Bill Clinton was raised by a single mother who was a nurse, third shift nurse in the hospital. Barack Obama was raised by a single mother. They were not raised in wealth. Mm-hmm. So when they take office, well, even before they take office, they pretty much make it clear that they are going to try to lean toward the center as much as they can to not upset the apple cart. But they'll do it with a heart. And I'm so disappointed now at my age that all this time has passed and we're still not near to the things that we need to have. Not half measures,
Sure.
Full measures. and we had 8 years of a Democrat with Clinton and 8 years of a Democrat with Obama. And I can't take 8 years.